Nice tea brewer, right? I told them to, you have to have the aeration from the bottom and then, put the compost tea going from the top. Whoops. Compost tea in the top. So this is their aerator. It's some of that irrigation tubing that, just the water comes out of it. I forget what it's called. Polypipe, yeah. And at the first tea brew, all of the organisms get inside that, it's like kind of like a fiberglass material, and it goes anaerobic in there. You're going to make a tea where you have to hold your aeration unit down on the bottom of the tank using rocks and bricks. What are you adding to the compost tea when you put that brick in there with, I don't know, what is that? Bird shit? Not a good idea. What kind of biofilm is going to form on those? Yeah, bad, nasty. So they changed it. They put this as just PVC pipe with holes in it. And then look at these, rebar. Foods. So here are some of the foods. We've talked about humic acid, complex proteins, kelp, real good source of fungal foods, oatmeal, bran, fish hydrolysate. Anything that has a wide carbon and nitrogen ratio. And then bacterial foods, the simple stuff. Apple juice. With fungi, you would want the pulp of the apples with the juice squeezed out. So, some pretty simple things that we probably have on farm that could be used as fungal foods versus the bacterial foods. Simple sugars, complex sugars. So temperature, slower growth. When it's colder, you're going to have to brew longer. As it warms up, you'll be brewing for a shorter period of time. So if you're at 72 degrees or higher, you're going to brew for somewhere between 20 to 24 hours. As it gets cooler, less than 72 degrees, you're going to be brewing for longer. So say at 55 degrees, you're going to be brewing for 36 hours. If we're getting down to 45 degrees, you're going to brew for 48 hours. How do you know when your tea brew is actually finished? You should not be able to smell any of your starting materials that you added. The fish hydrolysate smell should be gone. The smell of the kelp should be gone. You can be looking at your organisms and making sure that way as well. Just make sure that when you get to high temperatures, remember the organisms are going to grow faster. Higher temperature, they're going to use up the oxygen faster. So as it gets hotter, we need to use less food. The hotter it's getting, start dropping back on your foods because we don't want these organisms to grow so fast that they're using up all the oxygen and you go anaerobic. So typically when we get to a temperature of 100 degrees, you don't add any foods because you can't keep up with the oxygen demand of these organisms. So let me show you a little data. Try to not make this too boring. We're looking at oxygen. So the red line is the oxygen, and we are actively aerating. We're bubbling. So this is going on at a pretty good clip. The high on this, the maximum oxygen concentration that can exist in your water depends on temperature and on barometric pressure. The higher you are, the less oxygen is present. Your barometric pressure is lower. So if you're brewing at a mile high, you're probably not going to be putting more than just a couple teaspoons, even in a 500-gallon brew, because you're already at fairly limited oxygen conditions. The hotter it gets, the less oxygen can be in your air. So again, hotter it is, you can't have as much oxygen. So here we are. This was in Colorado, where we were about a mile high, and it was a fairly warm day. So maximum oxygen concentration is 8 parts per million. Where do you find when you're brewing someplace? Where do you find the data to tell you what's your maximum? It's the USGS, the Geological Survey. and you go to their website and you type in oxygen concentration with temperature and elevation, and bang, it'll take you right to the table. So you find out what your elevation is, you look at what your temperature is, and there's your maximum oxygen concentration. That's where you could start from. We're putting the biology into that water. And so, of course, right at first, not a lot of activity. The organisms aren't growing really fast yet. We've just diluted our organisms in a lot of water, so they're not very concentrated. But, of course, we've put foods in here. So they start growing, and watch the activity take off. As these organisms start growing really, really fast, they're finally starting to affect the oxygen concentration, the aeration, rolling boil on the surface of our tea brewer. And yet these organisms are growing so fast, they're growing, using up oxygen faster than we're diffusing oxygen into the water. Whoa. So we keep growing, they keep growing. They finally run out of food. And then we'll see the activity levels start to drop. Did this tea brew go anaerobic? Well, the threshold for anaerobic conditions is 6 parts per million oxygen, or 6 milligrams per liter. And so here we are. There's the threshold. Above this, we would consider it aerobic. Below that, we would consider it anaerobic. It's not that. It's not actually like that. As you step over the line, everything goes anaerobic. No, it's a threshold. So, but as that oxygen concentration is being used up by these organisms growing faster and faster, yes, this tea brew went over the edge into anaerobic conditions. All of our beneficial organisms had to go to sleep. They went dormant or they died. So we had a lot of death of the beneficial organisms. Some of them went to sleep. Some of them managed to go dormant fast enough. And our anaerobic organisms started to grow. Look at the fact that this is going from like 15 hours to 20 hours. Full 5 hours of anaerobic conditions. If you have E. coli, if you have human pathogens in the compost, if you haven't gotten a really good compost, then those bad guy organisms start to grow. The Pythium, Phytophthora, Rhizoctonia, the disease-causing fungi have a chance to grow too. So all of a sudden, bad things are happening in here. We're losing our nitrogen, our soluble nitrogen as ammonia. We're losing our sulfur. We're making some nasty acids. The pH will start to drop. Except the organisms ran out of food. And so because they're not growing very rapidly anymore, and we're still aerating, we're still, bubbling away, oxygen starts to return into that tea brew. And it comes back above aerobic. And so now the anaerobic organisms die or go dormant. And whatever aerobic organisms we still have left in that brew will wake up and start to grow again. But it's not as good a compost tea as we could have had. We've lost some really critical things. So we don't want to see that oxygen concentration going too low. So what do you do when you realize, well, either you wait till it cools off, you move to a lower elevation, maybe not going to work, or you put in less food. Isn't that just the easier thing to do? Put in less food. And so if we do that, we now have less food, so we take off. We don't ever drop oxygen down to anaerobic conditions. Doesn't even come close. We never lose the good guys. We don't develop any ciliates. We don't lose our nitrogen, our sulfur, our phosphorus, yada, yada. So this is the kind of testing that we want to do. What's the recipe? How much food can we put in? Depends on how much aeration your tea brewer is capable of. So either you're going to have to do this testing yourself or talk to the person making your tea brewer. They should be able to tell you. Make it simple. There are a number of organisms that we can add into teas when we have specific problems. So Beauveria is a fungus that is parasitic on soft-bodied insects. Beauveria grows extremely well in the tea brewer. But you do not want to follow the manufacturer's recommendations on the outside of the container. Do not follow their directions. You need a pinch of Beauveria. Into a 500-gallon brew, you would put a pinch of the Beauveria spores that come in the container. A pinch goes in every single one of those approximately 1 billion spores that you just added into your tea brew. Every one of them will germinate. At the end of the 48-hour tea brew, those Beauveria are going to be looking for soft-bodied insects to wipe out, and they are very good at doing that. Be a little careful with Beauveria. Do not be using Beauveria when you want to have bees around. Okay? Don't put it out at pollination time because the Beauveria will take out your bees. So careful. Use the Beauveria only when you have a soft-bodied insect wiping out your crop. It is a biocontrol agent. Trichoderma, Gliocladium are fungi that attack and parasitize other fungi. So you've got a mildew outbreak happening. Take a pinch of the Trichoderma, Gliocladium. Again, it's a pinch. Don't follow the directions on the package. The little container is going to tell you, put all of the spores in this thing into a quart of water and then spray out. If you do that, you are going to just gum up your tea brewer. It's going to be thick with those fungi as they germinate and grow. You only need a pinch. So then you would go and apply the compost tea to the foliage where you've got the disease outbreak happening. And you do this only when you're in that outbreak mode. Because if that trichoderma or the Gliocladium, if any of that tea drops onto your soil and these trichoderma and Gliocladium move through your soil and get to your root system, where your mycorrhizal fungi are colonizing your roots, these fungi attack and consume your mycorrhizal fungi. And we have shown this time and time again in real-world studies. So you got to be careful. If you have an outbreak and you choose to follow this path, you're going to have to replenish your mycorrhizal fungi. Just be aware of that. And actually, it would be preferable probably just to apply the good compost tea to the surfaces of your plant and prevent the disease-causing fungus or the insect pests from finding your leaf surfaces. But I like to go through these and kind of give you the be careful. People can tell you, oh yeah, this is the way to do it. But know what you're doing. Mycorrhizal fungi, of course, they can be added in a tea. But the humic acid in compost tea will get the spores of the mycorrhizal fungi to wake up and start to grow. So you don't want to be putting mycorrhizal spores in at the beginning of the brew cycle because your mycorrhizal fungi will all be dead at the end of your brew cycle. So you put the mycorrhizal spores into your compost tea just before you're going to spray it out, just before you inject down into your root zone and get that tea left in the area around your root zone. In the springtime with your seeds, soak your seeds in a mix of your compost tea with the mycorrhizal spores. So take all the seeds that you're going to be planting, put them into the compost tea with the mycorrhizal spores. The mycorrhizal spores attach to organic matter instantly. And they are glued there. They're stuck there now. So they're on your seed surfaces. All the microorganisms inside the seed coat, in the cracks or crevices. 15 minutes, take those seeds out. You don't want your seeds to be imbibing and starting to germinate. Dry those seeds down. Plant them, tomorrow, the next day, 2 or 3 weeks, a month from now, not a problem. You've got the organisms on the seed surfaces. You have the mycorrhizal fungi on your seed surfaces. Bare root. Soak them in a compost tea with the mycorrhizal spores. So you get all of those organisms right on those surfaces, plant them, and your roots are already colonized with these good guy organisms. Here's some of the pseudomonads. You've got some pesticide problems. There you go. Let's get those pseudomonads. Bacillus species. There's a number of biocontrol agents here that you can buy. Serenade is a single bacillus species. that most insect pests do not like. Spray your plant surface. The insect pests don't want anything to do with your plant. Ew, yuck. I'm going someplace else. So a number of different biocontrol agents. If you're interested, I can talk to you about all the rest of them if you want.